Today we're going to talk about the most difficult sport to broadcast. And this has always amused me over the years, over the decades, working with thousands of broadcasting students. And I love to ask them this question: what do you think is the most difficult sport to broadcast? And it's funny because one that I think is the most difficult usually is the one that is the least chosen by the students. And it's interesting. And usually the only way to come to a conclusion is to have the student actually broadcast the different sports. And I always found this humorous and funny, and I went through it myself because I had a certain idea when I was young, when I was 18, 19, 20. But certainly over the decades since, my opinion has evolved and changed, and now I have this clear favorite that I pick as the most difficult sport to broadcast. So let's get into it. And if we haven't met, my name is Rick. Thank you for being here at the Sportscasters Club YouTube program. Please like this video if you find it interesting, if it makes you a better sports broadcaster or a better sports fan. That's our goal at Sportscasters Club. So the sport that I think is the most difficult to broadcast is actually the one that most of my students felt was the easiest to broadcast, and that is baseball. Most of my students told me that they thought baseball was the most simplest, the easiest, the most straightforward sport to broadcast, and they thought baseball was by far the easiest sport to broadcast. And I once thought the same thing. But now I completely disagree, and there are a few reasons why. The first and most glaring reason that I've personally seen baseball as the most difficult sport to broadcast, and I've seen it play out with so many students over the years, and I personally went through that journey. The reason I find baseball to be the most difficult for especially beginning broadcasters is because there's so much dead time. There's so much dead air. Now, for most people, they think, well, I know baseball, I know the sport, and I'm good at talking, and I love baseball, so that's going to make baseball the easiest sport for me to broadcast. And what I found early in my career was those things are simply not enough. They're simply not enough. They're important, but not nearly enough. And here's what I mean. I remember as an 18-year-old, the radio station I was working for, I was broadcasting minor league baseball games. They had a women's professional league come in for a special game one day. The team I was broadcasting for was out on the road. So the number one broadcaster went with the team to broadcast that game. But I stayed back to broadcast this women's professional game on the airwaves. And I did my preparation that I could. This was before the days where the internet really exploded. So information was limited. The teams showed up. I went down. I met some of the players, coaches that I could, got some information. But I knew baseball. I knew how to broadcast baseball. I was working at Fordham University with the great Marty Glickman. I knew the game. I had broadcast many games at the stadium already. So this wasn't going to be a problem, broadcasting women's professional baseball. But what I soon found out was that there was so much dead time for a lot of different reasons. The game dragged on. The pitching was not up to the level that I had seen in other places in professional baseball, and therefore there were a lot of walks. The defensive play was not stellar, so there were a lot of errors. And just like Little League, just like when you go and see your child play, the games dragged, and this game dragged. And when we hit the 3-hour mark, the 4-hour mark, the station manager showed up, put on some headsets, and began to banter with me, because obviously he could sense that I was struggling, because no matter how much I prepared, there was so much dead time, and I just didn't have the information to fill it. And so that probably meant it was a subpar broadcast for the listener. Now, I made it through it. He and I had some great banter and discussion during the game. And eventually we got through the game, and then we passed it off to the professional broadcast taking place on the road that day. But I learned that lesson. The reason baseball is so difficult is because there's so much dead time. The way to solve that, we've talked about that so many times over the decades here at Sportscasters Club, is that your preparation needs to be not where you think it needs to be for the game. It needs to be so much more. You've got to surpass your preparation where you only use 10 or 20% of the information you have during the game. That way, you've always got something to talk about. You've got tidbits. You've got facts and figures. My broadcast partner, Bill Rogan, used to say, tidbits make a broadcast. And he was so right. And what that means is you've got to have interesting, funny, informative, educational material ready to go, prepared to talk about the players, the league, the scenario, whatever's going on, the storyline. And these are all ways that you can fill that dead air. Because in baseball, you've got 30 to 60 seconds of dead time and then a pitch. And then 30 to 60 seconds of dead time and then a pitch. And only when the ball's put in play do you have the action. So this is the first reason why baseball is by far the most difficult sport to broadcast. Now I'll give you the second reason why baseball is the most difficult sport to broadcast. Because it's two completely different tempos. And I remember learning this from the great Eric Spitz at WFAN Radio 30 years ago when I was an intern there in New York City. And we were listening to my tape one day, and Eric paused the tape and he said, it would really be great if you could become better at changing your tempo. You've got one tempo, or you should have one tempo during the downtime where you're filling space, and then another tempo, another intensity when the ball's put in play. Great advice from a great professional in the industry. And so I worked on that over the years. And what that means is, as I've just talked about for the last 5 minutes, most of your time is dead time. Most of your time speaking, the ball's not in play. But then when the ball is put in play, it's got a higher intensity and a quick nature to it and a precision to it as the ball's put in play. And then you come back down. You're talking about what you see, what you feel, what you hear. And then the ball's put in play and you've got an intensity to it. And that's how you vary that based on what's happening on the field. And the reason this is so difficult for broadcasters is because you've got to be precise and excellent at both. The downtime, which is 95% of the broadcast, and then the ball in play, which is 5%. And oftentimes, especially for young broadcasters, not only do they find it very difficult to fill that downtime, but they find it extremely difficult to do that range, to do that differential, and to meet what you need in terms of intensity and precision of your description during when the ball's in play. So those are the two biggest reasons why I now feel baseball is the most difficult. And I've seen it time and time again. When I would ask a student, and then I would have them broadcast, whether it was when I was working at Fordham and having them broadcast a mock basketball game or a mock softball or baseball game, or whether it was when I was at Marist College or the Connecticut School of Broadcasting or any of those. But it's something that I learned firsthand because I started as a professional baseball broadcaster. Later, that's when I worked at Army, working with the football broadcasts, broadcasting Army basketball, hockey. So then I could compare the four. To me, the one I enjoy the most to this day is baseball, just because it's my favorite and I enjoy the tempo, the speed, the downtime. You've got to be able to enjoy that, and you've got to go in and prepare. I have a recurring nightmare every once in a while. And in this nightmare, the microphone goes on and it's time to broadcast the game. And I don't know who's playing. I don't know anything about the players. I don't know who the fielders are. So a ball gets hit, I don't know who that person is because I haven't prepared. That's my nightmare. Some people dream about snakes or alligators or monsters or gremlins or whatever else you have bad dreams about. My bad dream is about not being prepared for a broadcast. But over time, I learned that I needed to spend 3 hours preparing my scorebook to be set to go with all kinds of information. And then I needed to show up 3 or 4 hours before the game, stand by the batting cage, talk to the players, talk to the managers, get any information I could, and then go home at night and scour the internet and find all kinds of juicy, educational, informative information for my listeners, just in case it was a 14-1 game and I needed something to fill the downtime. But because I did that, then I was able to be comfortable and relaxed and prepared and have a great broadcast. So I guess I'll just, as a bonus before I wrap it up, I'll offer you what I think is the easiest sport for most beginner broadcasters. I think the easiest for many of them is basketball for a few quick reasons. Number one, there's only 5 players on each team. And you should be able to identify them because you're close. You're able to see them. You can see their face. That makes it much easier to identify players than football, than hockey, especially when changes are made on the fly, where you're not able to see a line change or a player substitution or something like that. So I always felt basketball was the easiest, number one. And the second reason is because you've got generally one tempo. It's kind of the reverse of baseball, where in baseball you've got 90% downtime, 5 or 10% action. Basketball is the opposite. You've got 90% action, 10% downtime. Maybe it's 75, 25, whatever, but it's the majority is action. So if you can master that pace and master the geography of the court, the right elbow, the right wing, swings it across left baseline, left corner, back up top, back to the foul line, left blocks, all that kind of description. If you can get that, that's going to carry you through a basketball game. You're describing the action. So in my nightmare, if I were not prepared, broadcasting a basketball game, much easier. And you can certainly learn this if you broadcast high school games where you don't have access to a lot of information. Broadcasting basketball is going to be a lot easier because the majority of it, you're just describing what you see. Meanwhile, if you're broadcasting baseball in high school, good luck, because you've got little more than names, some basic stats, number on the jersey. That's it. So that's why I feel baseball is the most difficult to broadcast. Basketball is the easiest. I'd love to hear what you think. This is what I've seen over decades working with thousands of students at Sportscasters Club, and I'm curious what you think. So shoot me a comment. Let me know, what do you think is the easiest sport to broadcast, and what do you think is the most difficult? Again, I'm Rick. Hope you can subscribe to our videos if you like this, if you found some value in it, and we'll see you next time. Hopefully we'll have something more for you then. We'll have something exciting to talk about, as we like to make you a better sports fan and a better sports broadcaster. And until then, so long.